He walked into the impossible. She couldn't look away. Zara pressed her four-fingered hand against the cold metal wall of the prison ship. Her violet eyes tracked the new arrival through the energy barrier that kept her locked inside the holding cell. The human male walked with a strange confidence that made no sense. Every species in the galaxy knew humans were weak. They had thin skin that tore easily. Their bones broke under pressure that would barely scratch a Calarian child. They lived such short lives that most civilizations did not bother learning their names. Yet this one moved like he owned the ship. The human was tall by his species standards, with dark hair and brown eyes that seemed to notice everything. His clothing was simple, dark pants and a plain shirt that had seen better days, but something about him made Zara lean forward despite herself. She had been captured 3 cycles ago when her scout ship was damaged near human space. The Vaxian Empire had been hunting her for stealing their weapon designs. Her people needed those blueprints to defend their homeworld from the Empire's expansion. Now she waited in this floating prison, while bounty hunters from 12 different species bid for the right to collect the reward on her head. She had given up hope of escape until this human appeared. Captain Nash stood in the main corridor speaking with his crew. The human approached without fear or weapons. Nash was a brutarian, 7 feet of muscle and fury with skin like armor plating. He could crush a human skull with one hand. The human stopped in front of Nash and spoke words Zara could not hear through the barrier. But she watched Nash's expression change from annoyance to surprise, to something that might have been respect that made no sense at all. The human turned and walked toward the holding cells. His eyes met hers through the energy field, and Zara felt something strange happen in her chest. Her people did not experience attraction to other species. It was biologically impossible. Yet she found herself studying his face with more interest than she cared to admit. The human stopped at her cell and placed his hand on the control panel. The barrier flickered and died. Zara stared at him in shock. "You coming or staying?" he asked in perfect galactic standard. Zara's translator implant had been damaged during her capture, but she understood enough. His accent was strange, but his meaning was clear. She stepped out of the cell and felt artificial. Gravity pulled at her in ways that reminded her of home. "Why?" she asked, using the few human words she knew. The human smiled, and it changed his entire face. "Because they were going to sell you to people who do bad things." Such simple words, but they carried weight that made Zara's hearts beat faster. Her people valued honor above all else. This human understood that concept in ways that surprised her. Alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in patterns that hurt Zara's eyes. The human grabbed her hand and pulled her down the corridor. His skin was warm against hers, and she noticed how carefully he held her despite his obvious hurry. They ran past other cells holding different species. A Thrakari warrior who roared as they passed, and a Mindiri trader who pressed tentacles against her barrier. But the human only stopped to free 2 others. One was a young female of a species Zara did not recognize. The other was an elderly Corvin whose scales had dulled with age. The human helped both of them with the same gentle care he had shown Zara. This made no sense either. Humans were supposed to be selfish creatures who cared only for themselves. They reached an access hatch that led to the ship's lower levels. The human opened it with tools that appeared from hidden pockets in his clothing. His movements were precise and practiced, like someone who had done this many times before. "Down," he said, pointing into the darkness. The Corvin elder hesitated. Fear showed in his large black eyes. The human noticed and placed a reassuring hand on the old being's shoulder. "Safe," the human promised. "Trust me." Something in his voice made them all believe him. They climbed down into maintenance tunnels that ran between the ship's outer hull and inner decks. The human led them through a maze of pipes and conduits that seemed impossible to navigate. Yet he never hesitated or took wrong turns. Zara found herself watching him more closely as they moved through the cramped spaces. He helped the elder when the passages became difficult. He made sure the young female stayed close when they had to cross dangerous gaps. He never once complained about the slow pace their group required. Her people had legends about beings who possessed inner strength that matched their physical weakness. They called them soul warriors and considered them myths. The human stopped at a junction where 4 tunnels met. He pulled out a device that projected a holographic map of the ship. The display showed their current location and multiple possible routes to the docking bays. But it also showed something else: security forces moving in patterns that would intercept any normal escape attempt. The human studied the map for several heartbeats, then made a decision that shocked Zara. He chose the route that led directly through the most heavily guarded section of the ship. "Wrong way," Zara said in her broken human language. The human looked at her with those brown eyes that seemed older than his face suggested. Sometimes wrong way is only way. They emerged from the maintenance tunnels into a corridor filled with armed guards. The soldiers wore the black armor of the Vaxian Imperial Guard, elite warriors, who had conquered dozens of worlds Zara expected to die in the next few seconds. Instead, the human walked directly toward them, with his hands raised and empty. The guards raised their weapons but hesitated when they saw he carried no threat. "Excuse me," the human said in a polite voice. "I think I took a wrong turn." The lead guard laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Human fool, you will join the others in the holding cells." "Actually," the human replied, "I have a better idea." What happened next burned itself into Zara's memory forever. The human moved with speed that seemed impossible for his species. His empty hands became weapons that struck with precision that would impress a Calarian combat master. The guard's armor meant nothing against techniques that targeted joints and nerve clusters. In less than 10 heartbeats, 6 elite soldiers lay unconscious on the deck. The human picked up one of their weapons and checked its charge level. He handed a second weapon to Zara and smiled apologetically. "Sorry for the violence," he said. "I preferred talking, but they were not listening." Zara stared at him. Her worldview had just been destroyed and rebuilt in the space of a few moments. Everything her people believed about humans was wrong. They reached the docking bay where a small ship waited. The human's vessel was nothing impressive. Old hull plating and engines that had seen decades of use. But it was spaceworthy, and that was all that mattered. The human helped everyone board, then sealed the hatch behind them. As the ship lifted away from the prison vessel, Zara watched through a viewport as Imperial fighters moved to intercept them. She waited for fear to grip her hearts. Instead, she felt something she had never experienced before: complete confidence in another being's abilities. The human pilot handled the ship like it was part of his own body. He dove through asteroid fields that would challenge experienced navigators. He used the ship's small size and agility to avoid weapons that could have destroyed them instantly. When they finally reached safe space, the human set the autopilot and turned to face his passengers. "Where do you need to go?" he asked each of them. The young female wanted to return to her family on a distant rim world. The Corvin elder needed transport to a medical facility that could treat his species. When it came to Zara, she hesitated. Her homeworld was in the middle of a war zone. The Vaxian Empire had blockaded all approaches. Anyone who tried to help her would face certain death. She told him this and waited for him to refuse. Instead, the human nodded thoughtfully. "Sounds dangerous," he said. "When do we leave?" Zara felt something break open in her chest. A warmth that spread through her entire being. Her people had words for this feeling, but she had never expected to experience it with an alien. Over the next several days, as they traveled toward her home system, Zara learned more about humans than her species had discovered in decades of contact. The human's name was Jake, and he had spent most of his adult life helping people who could not help themselves. He carried no weapons by choice, but could fight with deadly skill when necessary. He asked for no payment and expected no gratitude. Most surprising of all, he treated every species they encountered with the same respect he would show his own kind. When they finally reached Zara's homeworld, the Vaxian blockade was exactly as brutal as she had warned. Jake studied the enemy fleet positions, with the same careful attention he had given the prison ship layout. "Can you get a message to your people?" he asked. Zara used the ship's communications array to contact the underground resistance. Her commander's face appeared on the screen. "Commander." Lisa, who had been fighting the Empire for over a decade. "We have the weapon designs," Zara reported. But we cannot break through the blockade. Lisa's expression was grim. Then we will have to accept defeat. The Empire has won. Jake stepped into view of the camera. His presence seemed to fill the small bridge. Not yet, he said simply. What followed was the most impossible military operation Zara had ever witnessed. Jake's small ship became the center of a coordinated attack that turned the Empire's own strength against itself. He used ancient human tactics combined with technology that seemed to violate several laws of physics. The blockade ships found themselves confused and